2000s was such a pivotal point in media. Some would consider it the Renaissance, but I personally consider it the era of the Penguin. March of the Penguins, Madagascar, Happy Feet, Surf's Up. Penguin fever was at an all-time high in the 2000s. But there's been kind of a heated debate since the dawn of time. Which is the greatest animated penguin movie? Happy Feet or Surf's Up? Now, sure, there's other ones like Pingu, but you know, we're just going to disqualify that for reasons. And I'm going to be honest with everyone. Since recently, I've never seen Surf's Up. And Happy Feet to me was kind of just, you know, it was all right. It was an all right movie. And after watching Surf's Up, boy, it's kind of wicked. Surf's Up is such a unique movie that is way ahead of its time. Having that vibe of like an MTV documentary while at the same time having like a good lesson and a decent story. It talks about falling in love with the process rather than worrying about all the glory, and touches a lot upon picking happiness over, you know, competitive stuff, and teaches a lot about happiness and how we should all go about life. And the reason I feel like this movie is ahead of its time is it definitely rings true to today. We're a part of this like get that bag culture. Everyone's running around doing all this crazy shit just to get a little bit of likes, a little bit of views, doing anything just to get there, get that attention, because we're all focusing on the wrong things. We're focusing on the glory. We're focusing on winning rather than enjoying the process of getting there. It's just a fancy way of saying enjoy the journey, not the destination. But before we get too deep into these lessons about this movie, let's talk about another reason why this movie was ahead of its time. Because this movie honestly revolutionized cinema as a whole. Yeah, I know. Surf's Up actually revolutionized cinema. Something so cool about this movie that you'll notice when you watch it is it really feels like there's an actual cameraman in there in that virtual world. And the funny thing about that is that's actually what's happening. The animators basically created a scene, like a setup, without putting like virtual cameras, because virtual cameras have too much unnatural movement, too smooth, you know, it doesn't have that human feel. So they basically created the scene and then put a camera on top of a camera that kind of motion tracks where he is in that virtual world. So they actually had a cameraman physically play out the scene. There's actually a whole video on this on YouTube. I highly recommend watching it because it is so freaking cool how it works. Because so much of this movie was improv. The camera work, a lot of the dialogue, and the cameraman got to just have free reign to do whatever they want. They had so many opportunities for different angles. They're able to hide behind landscapes like leaves and different things to give that vibe that the camera people are actually hiding and spying on the people, like a conversation or eavesdropping. You know, the classic like reality show, documentary type feel to it, and it's so cool. And like I said before, a lot of the dialogue in this is improv, which makes it that much more realistic. And you could honestly tell with how they talk. There's a lot of bros, there's a lot of uhs, there's a lot of just free form speech that doesn't feel scripted and boring. And the payoff for all of that was really good. It was so immersive. It's honestly a great watch, and I love this movie, I'm not gonna lie. The movie has such a great cast. We have Shia LaBeouf, Zooey Deschanel, John Heder, Jeff Bridges, James Woods, Cedric Bader, and so much more. How the movie starts is a classic, you know, marker thing that they do with the little click, little click clack. So the whole movie is basically a reality show slash documentary on Cody, who is a surfer who is a penguin. But the reason that Cody was so into surfing is a surfer named Big Z. He's kind of like the face of surfing, like the first really big surfer. He came to Antarctica one day and told him, you know, never give up, basic Instagram quote type stuff. And that kind of stuck with him for the rest of his life, and he decided to, you know, live for surfing basically. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention before we continue. The soundtrack to this fucking movie is it's banger. Very beginning of the movie, we start out with Green Day. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. And right off the bat, we can kind of see he's a little bit egotistical. He's a little bit into himself, like, yo, I'm the best. Hey, look at me. Look, I could surf. I'm better than anybody.
I'm really good, man. I'm the best on the island.
And he believes that this is the ticket for him to get off the island. And we even get the classic parent and older brother who just naysay everything he believes in. Is like, yo, you're never gonna make it out of here. Sorry, no, it's just not gonna work out for you. I'm glad they represented it that way, because that, I feel like, it's the most common situation. I mean, for me, that was how it was. for plenty of other people who follows their dreams, it's the same shit, which I'm hoping over time we start normalizing a little bit more about following your dreams, because I don't know if you guys know this, but happiness is pretty important when it comes to life. I love the dialogue throughout the movie, like the little family squabble they have when they're sitting on the ice couch. It just feels so natural and realistic to how like a normal family would be bickering with each other, an older brother bickering with his younger brother and all that nonsense. And next we get introduced to Reggie Belafonte, who's a surf promoter. And again, he's another great example of just promotion agents in general. They don't really give a shit about the person they're promoting. They just give a shit whether or not they're gonna get that bag. And we get a good example right off the bat, because Big Z unfortunately died in a surfing accident, and Reggie's response to it was very, you know, not really caring much about it.
It was a heart thing, you know, it was a heart. Can we just take 5 minutes? How's my hair? Is it messed up?
And we skip this little news segment, and I love the camera work on this, where they kind of zoom into people in the background and their different reactions, just like a real life situation. And you'll notice that a lot throughout this, how there's like some stuff going on in the background and they kind of lose focus on the main person talking and zoom into something that's happening behind them that's more entertaining, you know, that classic reality show bit, and it works so good in this. During this news segment, they're talking about the Big Z Memorial Surf Off, this huge surfing event that takes all of the biggest surfers from around the area in order to do this competition. And then we also get introduced to Tank, who is honestly a hilarious character, voiced by Diedrich Bader. The reason this character's so hilarious is he's just unapologetically an asshole and very, very full of himself to the point that you can't help but just love him. I wouldn't say you can't help but love, you can't help but love to hate him, I guess. Like the part where he's surfing around and destroying every little kid that's just surfing next to him and counting each time he destroys their board. And then we meet Mike the Bird, who goes around to different countries in order to recruit surfers. And this is where he's gonna find Cody. But unfortunately, there's no waves to be had, and then Mikey ends up giving up on Cody and leaving. But Cody didn't give up. He chases down the whale and barely is able to make it on top. And Mikey agreed that he could stay along, mainly just because, you know, he doesn't really have anywhere else to go. And then we meet Chicken Joe, who's kind of the comedic relief throughout this movie. And the reason I love Chicken Joe's character is he's kind of the epitome of what the movie's lesson is about. Because Chicken Joe is the complete opposite of Cody. All Cody cares about is winning and beating other people. Whereas Chicken Joe, he's just vibing. He doesn't care about winning. He doesn't care about anything. He just enjoys surfing and likes hanging out with people. And Chicken Joe and Cody obviously hit it off pretty quick as good friends. And then we meet Lonnie, who is obviously going to be the romantic love interest throughout this movie. And she's just the lifeguard, but we'll find out later on that she's going to be actually a more important character in this movie. Here's another good example of how the camera itself is almost like a personality. You really feel like the camera is a character in this movie, because they're interviewing Lonnie and she's talking about how she has a perfect record and she's never lost anyone. And while she's talking about that, they zoom in and focus on a little baby penguin that's running into the ocean. And then in this next scene, Cody kind of gets taught a lesson about how kind of far behind he is when it comes to skill, because he gets into a little fight with Tank because Tank was throwing rocks at Big Z's surfboard, and then Tank starts laughing at Cody for even being a fan of Big Z, so he challenges him to a surf off. Obviously, Cody loses pretty terribly. So Lonnie ends up saving him and taking him to a dude named Zeke, who's apparently a dude that could help these situations. And we find out that Cody accidentally stepped on a sea urchin, and in order to stop the poison, he had to get a little bit of a golden shower. So the next day, Zeke shows Cody back to the beach, and obviously Cody doesn't want to. He doesn't even want to compete after, you know, getting embarrassed by Tank. So Zeke offers to make Cody a surfboard because Cody doesn't have one. And throughout this movie, they have a side story with Chicken Joe where he's searching for Cody. He stumbles upon some indigenous penguins that try to cook him, and there's just a funny comedic story behind. It doesn't have just one storyline. There's like a few different ones that are going at the same time, and they kind of cut back and forth between them. So they're trying to move this big log of wood back to his hut in order to carve it, and then Cody accidentally rolls it and then ends up pushing Zeke down the hill. And whenever Zeke and Cody arrive to the private beach, we figure out that Zeke is no other than Big Z. He actually ended up faking his death, which later on we'll discover why. And then we get the infamous trophy scene with Tank, where he basically sexually assaults every single one of his trophies. And this entire scene was also improvised, which makes it that much more funny.
Teresa.
Now, is Teresa, is that your
Dirty girl. I'm gonna say that one more time. Leah. Oh, yeah.
So for a while, Cody tries to convince Big Z to teach him how to surf, but Big Z does not want to get into the water, it seems. He doesn't want to surf at all. And then we get the scene where Big Z tries to teach Cody how to make his own surfboard. And this is where we can see the glaring differences between their personalities. Where Big Z is all about patience and enjoying the process, which is kind of like the big point of this movie. Cody's all about getting things done fast and winning. And whenever that happens, his board turns out like complete shit the first time. And then we find out that Lonnie is actually Big Z's niece. And so she obviously gets excited when she finds out that Big Z went down to his beach. And then we get a little romance scene of them flirting and having a fun time. And Lonnie teaches him another lesson about enjoying things rather than being overly competitive about it. And after that little learning experience with Lonnie, he goes back and spends the rest of the night recarving the board. And this time he actually spends it going really slow, enjoying the process, having a lot of patience with it, and he creates the perfect board for him. And I also like how they added this little part in here, kind of like a homage to surfing and a respect to it. They got a couple professional surfers to describe why they enjoy surfing, but they kind of added that overdub of them talking about it while we see some surfing, which I thought was really cool.
Tube riding is the ultimate thing in surfing, to ride inside the wave.
Almost impossible to describe. There's nothing I can compare it to.
Because yeah, I feel like surfing is a really freaking cool sport that's really overlooked, and them kind of respecting it by showing some professionals' opinion about it is really cool. And hearing why they enjoy surfing is such a cool thing, because I'm always interested in why people enjoy the things they do. And when people do things that are really cool, I don't really want to know how they do it. I want to know why they do it, what interests them, what is like the driving force behind it. And even after carving that surfboard, Cody still doesn't really grasp what he's trying to learn here, or what Zeke's trying to teach him, because Zeke kind of, peeks a little lesson at him, a little tip about surfing, and Cody's first response is, will that get me enough points to win? Like, does that get extra points if I do that? But that's not really what he's trying to teach him. And so in the next scene, Zeke agrees to teach Cody how to surf, but instead of actually doing it in the water, he's wanting to teach him on the land. And Big Z starts just doing these random things, pranking him and just messing with Cody, until Cody finally pranks him back, and then Zeke asks, are you having fun? And Cody replies, yes. And that was the entire lesson. He just wanted Cody to loosen up and actually have fun, because you're always at your best when you're having fun. I feel like watching this movie came at such an opportune time for me, because I've been struggling with this a lot. For example, my YouTube videos. Is this gonna get enough views? Is this good enough? The numbers, you worry about the numbers. And once you start making this a job, it's really tough to stop focusing on the numbers and kind of go back to your roots and really focus on the enjoyment of just making the video itself. For example, with my music, I haven't created Fallen Pine music in a long time. And a lot of it had to do with, it's not good enough. It's not going to get enough listens. And also the problem with me taking stuff too seriously, taking my music too seriously. But honestly, you are at your best when you're not taking things seriously, when you're just having fun. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing has to be perfect. It just has to be you. As long as you're enjoying that thing, you're headed in the right direction. Like, instead of doing everything in your power to reach that goal, if you fall in love with the process before even reaching that goal, you won't even need the goal at the end, because the enjoyment comes from that process. The winning comes from the enjoyment of the process. And hey, you will probably eventually reach that goal anyway, because you're having fun with the process. So the process will be a lot more fluent. You'll get more done. You'll have more fun. And in the end, you'll come out a lot better than you would have if you were just scratching and climbing to reach a goal that just isn't necessary. You really have to keep the enjoyment of the process there, or you're just never going to be happy with it. But anyway, this gets Big Z to actually go out and surf with Cody and just have fun. And even Lonnie comes out and joins all of them, and they're just having fun together. And since Cody's having fun, he's actually getting better. He's learning faster. He's just enjoying it. And whenever Cody starts pushing Zeke to go watch him surf in the competition, Zeke finally tells him why he went into hiding. See, Zeke actually learned the hard way of this whole lesson that we've been talking about through this entire video. For Zeke, winning was everything to him at that point in time when he was at the peak in his career. But whenever Tank came along and challenged him, Zeke realized that he was not able to keep up with Tank anymore. You know, he was getting old, and Tank was able to do things that he wasn't able to do. So to save him from the embarrassment, in his eyes, embarrassment of losing, he just decided to stage his own death. Yeah, quite an extreme way of just not wanting to lose. And ever since then, he's just been embarrassed to show his face to anyone. And so this last scene is such like a big character development moment. There's this area in the ocean that has a bunch of jagged rocks in there where a bunch of surfers have died, apparently. And Chicken Joe, Cody, and Tank are in the finals, and Tank, you know, is trying to like knock both of them out, basically. And in order to save Chicken Joe from Tank knocking him off, he ends up pushing Tank over to the jagged rock section, and they have like a little, you know, scary situation. Tank ends up getting knocked out, and lo and behold, who's there to save the day for Cody? It's Big Z, hanging onto his old surfboard, actually. And so in the end, Big Z kind of reveals himself to everyone that he's been in hiding this whole time and all that stuff. Chicken Joe ends up winning, and I love this part because Chicken Joe didn't even realize he won. When you see the scenes of him surfing, he doesn't even know necessarily that it's a competition. He's just enjoying the ride. I love the last line of the movie because in the very beginning, Cody could not stop talking about himself and how good he is at surfboarding and all that different stuff. But the last line in the movie, he actually says,
To be honest, man, I'm kind of like bored of talking about myself, so is that cool?
and then he goes off to go surf with, you know, Big Z and all of his new friends just to enjoy it, you know, not to win a competition or anything, just to have fun. And that Surf's Up, such a good movie, such like a lesson in happiness, because this could relate to everything, not just surfing. There's so much cool shit in this movie, so many good lessons, so many good characters, a lot of comedy, that the camera work is amazing. I highly, highly recommend that you watch this movie if you haven't watched it before. And I honestly hope you guys got something from this video. You know, maybe there's a project you're working on, maybe there's a goal that you're looking for, and maybe all you really need to do is just stop taking things so seriously. You know, stop trying to be perfect. You know, being a perfectionist, you'll never be able to be perfect. The perfection is in the imperfections that you produce yourself. So whatever thing you're doing, maybe to stop for a second, be a little bit more patient, and enjoy yourself, and just try to find some happiness in the little things. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a fantastic day. Mwah.